أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله.
So there is a dome inside that dome of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. There are things I've heard that at the top there is a window and you can see directly within, but Allahu alam, I don't know whether that is true. Is there a way to inside the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam's grave? As far as I know, there isn't. And the reason for that, because there's a building that's built above and there's one that goes down, and there's a lead and iron building below. And the reason for that is Nur ad-Din al-Zinki in the time, who was the Sheikh of Salah ad-Din al-Ayyubi, may Allah have mercy upon them both. The Crusaders actually dug a hole to try and steal the Prophet ﷺ's body. Okay, and they actually got far enough to able to see the feet of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So Nur ad-Din al-Zinki, he saw in a dream that the Prophet ﷺ told him, yani something is going wrong here. So he went under, and he actually saw the blessed feet of the Messenger, and he kissed his feet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And this is why he built a lead wall under. So then since then it's locked up. So the Prophet ﷺ is buried here. Sayyidina Abu Bakr is buried behind the Prophet ﷺ at his shoulder. Sayyidina Umar at the feet of Sayyidina Abu Bakr behind him. There remains one space, and that is the space of Sayyidina Isa ibn Maryam, ala nabina wa alayhi salatu wasalam, Prophet Jesus. So which is an indication that that place is going to be opened up. How? I don't know. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. So that is generally some of the things around the Prophet ﷺ's chamber, around this area. Al-Baqi' al-Gharqad, obviously you know, is over there. Many of the Sahaba of the Prophet ﷺ, his family, from the scholars of Islam, Sayyidina Imam Malik is buried there. The Prophet ﷺ's son Ibrahim is buried there. The Prophet ﷺ's uncles, Sa'ad ibn Mu'az, some of the great Sahaba, are all buried in that region. So if you ever get a chance, even as for the women, if even from here you give your salams, it'll reach those blessed people. Okay, so that is in general some of the details about Al-Madinah Munawwara, about how they used to live. Some of the the stalls, the market stalls used to just be around here. So when we're talking about, it wasn't that big, and the Prophet ﷺ, he would be around here. Now obviously think about putting it this way, inshallah we'll see a bit more. Anything beyond this region, that way, was Jewish tribes. Alright, so Medina was actually a very, very hostile and dangerous place to be. So now, mashallah, we can just walk and move as much as we want. But in the time of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, it was very, very dangerous. So for him to walk out, alayhi salatu wasalam, which he did on many occasions, it would be very risky. He would be putting his life at risk, alayhi salatu wasalam, because they would be looking at any opportunity to try and obviously remove the Messenger, alayhi afdal as-salati wa atammu at-taslim. So we'll go from here, inshallah, down towards this side. Started in Mecca to Mukarramah. You had the various allegiances that were pledged to the Prophet ﷺ. There was two bay'ahs that took place, Bay'at al-Aqaba al-Ula and Aqaba al-Thaniya. The first allegiance of Aqaba and the second allegiance of Aqaba that took place. So the main thing for the Prophet ﷺ, obviously you had the Muslims were persecuted in Mecca for 14 years. Okay, and as we know, 14 years after Hijrah, the Prophet ﷺ with Abu Bakr went to Jabal Thawr, which we saw in Mecca. Okay, and this was the spot. This was the time when the Prophet ﷺ, before that, the decision was made that the Prophet ﷺ was going to move. Obviously, he sent people to Abyssinia with Sayyidina Ja'far al-Sadiq, okay, Ja'far al-Tayyar, the Prophet ﷺ's cousin. They were sent to Abyssinia for migration purposes because they were persecuted at that time. And obviously, at that time, you had the king of Abyssinia. I've forgotten his name now. What's his name? Najashi. Najashi is the title. Najashi is the title. I've forgotten his actual name. But ala kulli hal, was a just person, and then obviously he became a Muslim after that. And that is also when he passed away, the Prophet ﷺ prayed upon him. How did he do it? From a distance, and that's where the Shafi'is get the praying upon the absentee. When someone passes away, you can still pay janazah upon that person. Well, the Hanafis, most of you are Hanafis, will say that it's because, no, that was a miracle, and that's only for the Prophet ﷺ. Okay? Either way, so they were sent there, and then the Prophet ﷺ then migrated to Medina with the Aws and the Khazraj. So they were the two tribes that came to the Prophet ﷺ, and they openly greeted the Messenger ﷺ, the Ansar. So the Ansar came, not the Aws and the Khazraj, the Ansar, they came to the Messenger ﷺ, and they openly greeted him and took the allegiance with the Messenger ﷺ, which is why they came here. And we'll hopefully see the Prophet ﷺ sent So Sayyidina Mus'ab ibn Umair was the first da'i sent over to Medina to Munawwara to firstly begin the first preparations in the Muslims coming over to here, and obviously to make da'wah. And Sayyidina Sa'ad ibn Mu'adh, one of the leaders of the tribes of the Ansar, one of the great Sahaba radiallahu ta'ala anhu, was also here, and he accepted Islam via Sayyidina Mus'ab ibn Umair. And that was basically what paved the way for the coming of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam into Al-Madinah to Munawwara. In addition to the Prophet ﷺ coming to Medina to Munawwara alayhi salatu wasalam, the Ansar, when they came, and the brotherhood that was made was a brotherhood that was a lot more stronger than what we see today, in the sense that it got to a point that if they had many wives, they would tell them, choose whichever one you want, with the Muhajirin. And that is why the Muhajirin and the Ansar were very close, to such an extent even that they would inherit from one another. Okay, even though they were not related by blood. Okay, that's how strong the brotherhood was made in the early years of Islam. And when the Prophet ﷺ migrated, at that time, migration was an obligation to the Prophet ﷺ. So if you were living even in Mecca, it was an obligation for them to migrate. There were only exceptions made for certain particular people, like the Prophet ﷺ's uncle Abbas, okay? But otherwise, in general, it was an obligation upon anybody who became a Muslim at the time of the Prophet ﷺ. After he made the migration to Medina, they had to migrate. Okay, and if they didn't, then it would not be something seen very lightly in the gaze of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So where we are today now, we've moved from here to here, and this is Masjid al-Ghumama. It's called Masjid al-Ghumama. Masjid al-Ghumama is known very famously for, in the time of the Khilafah of of Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu an, when there was a drought in Medina, they came over here to pray, and as they were about to pray, the Prophet, Sayyidina Umar ibn al-Khattab, he told Abbas, the Prophet's uncle, to take forward. And normally it's the Khalifa who goes. And Sayyidina Abbas was not going to do that. He said, I'm not going to go ahead of the Khalifa. But Sayyidina Umar insisted because he said that you are the uncle of the Prophet ﷺ, and the family of the Prophet ﷺ takes precedence. And this is where they made the dua, that dua, the famous dua over here. And one of the first, if you want to say, indications of the validity or permissibility of the many people outside looking, but tawassul, it's a naughty word to say here apparently, but tawassul, where you seek intercession through the Prophet ﷺ and his family. Okay, but this is where one of the first places it took place. Here you have Masjid Ali Masjid Ali ibn Abi Talib, one of them or them. But this is another musalla of the Eid, where the Prophet ﷺ prayed Eid. So the Prophet ﷺ wouldn't just pray in the masjid, he'd actually move around and pray Eid outside. And that is the sunnah of the Messenger ﷺ for Eid, and obviously for drought prayer, etc. Because you're trying to bring as much people as possible, and at the same time space to bring animals and these type of creatures as well to these places. As you can see, the design is actually, it's been built a little bit, but it's more or less like how the Ottomans left it. Okay, so in the Ottoman times, these are how they actually set these places where they are. We're going to see inshallah in the ziyarat to come what we call the 7 masajid. It's not 7, it's not limited to 7. I think there's about 9 or something like that, but they call them the 7 masajid, and they are, some of them already here. One of them is Uthman, is further. If you go to Crown Plaza Hotel, behind that you'll see a mosque. That's Uthman. You've got Bilal, which is that big green one on that side. You might have seen it. I think Masjid Ali is this one, or it might be that one. It's one of those two. But either way, that's the third one, and then the rest we're going to go to inshallah when we go to do the ziyarat. Abdullah's buried there. And Sayyidah Amina, the Prophet's mother, you actually drove past it in just not very far from Badr. Between Badr and Medina is where the Prophet's mother was buried, Sayyidah Amina. Not very easy to get to, but inshallah in the future we can hopefully plan visiting Sayyidah Amina, inshallah ta'ala. So the Prophet, as you know, when he arrived from this direction. He came from Quba, and hopefully we'll see in the ziyarat where exactly he entered. And he arrived from here, and when he entered, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he entered from this point round there. And this is where he let the camel go, Qaswa, and Qaswa obviously laid over there. So that's where under the green dome, which where the Prophet's house was. Obviously this extension, which is the Saudi expansion, King Fahd, he expanded it this way, and I believe the other expansion as well, that way was expanded, and now obviously they're doing another expansion towards that side. All right, so that's generally part of the history of the Masjid of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This minaret, you can see it looks different to the rest of them.
Yeah.
Right, that actually minaret that's from the Mamalik, from the Mamluks period. So that is from their period. It's been there from that time. As for some history around the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam's masjid, they mentioned some of the scholars, they say actually it extends beyond from here to where we're going to go to now, Masjid Umama, around there. And some of them they say no, the whole of Medina is Riyadh al-Jannah. Okay, so they all extend that to beyond that point. So anytime you ever feel you can't get in, don't feel disheartened, yani. So the scholars are actually they mention that from there. Within the Mosque of the Prophet is really where you start seeing the secret details. So there's a pillar, if you can read the Arabic, there's a pillar where one of the Sahaba, he tied himself to it because of Tawbah. He wasn't able to go to one of the battles, the expeditions, so he tied himself to that as a form of Tawbah, and then Allah revealed Ka'b bin Malik, Allah revealed the verses of the Quran to show that Allah has forgiven them. And there's a long wonderful story. It's probably one of my favorite stories I have read. Then you have the Ustuwana of Sayyidah Aisha. The Prophet ﷺ said if people knew what was behind there from good, then they would fight towards it. Okay, so there's Ustuwana of Sayyidah Aisha. You also have the place where the Prophet ﷺ did i'tikaf. All of them are written there. Inshallah, if I can get a picture or whatever, I'll send it to Muslim or Afan, and they can send it on the group so you can see more. That's one of the things. Now, one of the things about the Prophet ﷺ's place of prayer, most commonly people mention, I've heard this from some of the scholars, is that the mihrab, the point where the Imam now prays, they say that is not exactly the spot where the Prophet ﷺ prayed. They actually say it's further to the right. And the reason why the Ottomans did that, because they're very clever, they don't want anyone to step on the area where the Prophet ﷺ prayed, out of honor. So technically you can't really pray in the area where the Prophet, your head will touch the ground where his feet touch, but your feet will never touch the ground where his head or whatever touched, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Medina has many names. It's known as Habiba, it's known as Tayyiba, the beloved, the purifying one. And from one of the indication of the unique nature of Medina that is mentioned in some hadith, strength of them is questionable, but again, if it indicates to encourages good, it's something good to have. And Medina Munawwara, one of the things it has is that to come here regularly and go, it removes a lot of sins. Just coming here, just coming. And the Prophet ﷺ said, if anybody can die in Medina, then do that, which is an indication of what? Try and come here very regularly. And inshallah, you guys are all here now, but our scholars, they mentioned, don't come here with the intention of visiting, come here with an intention of as a resident. Okay, not as an intention of you're visiting just to go, but you're residing in Medina Munawwara, because this is really the home of the believers, is here. And the Prophet ﷺ said, Iman runs to Medina just how the snake runs to its hole. Okay, it doesn't run, but it slithers to its hole. But that's the way of Medina Munawwara. That's how it attracts. And at the same time, when it comes to the end of days, Medina is also, it mentions the Prophet ﷺ that Yawm al-Khalas, the day that it takes a breath of fresh air. And that's the day when Medina kicks out all of the dirt and filth of hypocrisy out. And that includes the people. May Allah protect us from that. But it physically kicks them out. Some scholars, they say it's a spiritual thing. People will just decide to leave, which is why the great Sahaba and the righteous people always were worried about leaving. Okay, whether is this a sign of them being kicked out or what? Either way, Medina Munawwara is a place of, whilst you're here, again we mentioned this before coming, but make it a place of you reside. Okay, and that's when you make a place that's your home, it's different to just visiting. You just pass by and go. No, it's a place that you're here to reside. You're here to leave a mark for yourself. Even if that means Jum'ah is coming, women, you cut your nails. Okay, if you get a chance to go to Baqi', bury them. At least a part of you is buried in Baqi'. Okay, and inshallah you'll be resurrected from that. Okay, so but try and do it secretly. If you find the grave, then khalas, just throw it in the grave. All right, but make use of these crazy moments. Okay, it's good to be crazy at times. Use these moments to try and merge with the earth of Medina. The earth of Medina is Shifa. The Prophet ﷺ mentioned that we're going to go to Quba Shifa, the area inshallah where the Prophet ﷺ put his blessed saliva on the ground, because Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddiq was ill. And many of the Sahaba fell ill when they first came here. As you remember when I mentioned that yesterday, it was the name before. And then the Prophet removed that name and called it Madinah Munawwara, the illuminated city, because of him alayhi salatu wasalam. So Sayyidina Abu Bakr fell ill and the Sahaba complained, so he put his blessed saliva on the ground, and then from then the people of Medina used to take Shifa, and then Sayyidina Abu Bakr and all of them took Shifa. And some of the scholars say it's only to that place we're going to go to tomorrow inshallah, but the other scholars say no, it's all of the earth of Medina Munawwara. So all of the earth of Medina Munawwara is blessed with the saliva of the blessed saliva of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. There's many wells. Some of the Sidi Muhsin was telling me that you guys went to Badr and you went to well of Shifa, right? The well of Shifa. And I was telling him that there are many wells of Shifa in Medina. I don't know why you went so far away. Okay, but there are many, all of them. And you get to see an image of what the people of Medina were like with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So he might have gone to one place and he would have put his blessed saliva in there, done ghusl in that area. But then there's some of the other Sahaba living other else, and I say, no, we want the messenger to come over there. We can't travel all the way to that side. We need something here as well.